Taiwan, I'm Laurel Stewart with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. 4 crew members of a Taiwanese fishing boat detained in China are on their way back to Taiwan after being held for over a month. But the boat's captain is still in detention in China. Louise Watt is following the story for us from Taipei. Louise, what do we know about these men's release?
Well, their release comes after discussions between Taiwanese officials and city-level officials in China. And this morning, China released 4 fishers. 1 was Taiwanese, 3 were Indonesian. As you say, Laurel, the captain is still in China along with their boat, and that's because of an ongoing investigation, according to China. Now, the 4 who were released, they were taken in a small boat from a port in China to the median line in the Taiwan Strait. That's the unofficial border between Taiwan and China. And that's where the handover took place. Now, it's obviously dependent on the weather, but if all goes according to plan, they should arrive back on the Taiwanese island of Penghu tonight. Now, the background to this case, they were detained by China's Coast Guard at the beginning of July in waters close to Jinmen, that's a Taiwanese island. China's Coast Guard says they were in Chinese waters. They were flouting a seasonal ban on fishing in that area, and they were also using illegal fishing nets. That's because their nets had a mesh that was a smaller size than what was allowed to protect fishing stocks. Now, Taiwan recognized that they were in Chinese waters, but they said it was unusual for a fishing vessel to be treated in this way, and they characterized the response from China as heavy-handed. Now, this was one case in a series in the past few months that have raised tensions in the waters between Taiwan and China. In February, 2 Chinese fishers drowned while being chased by Taiwan's Coast Guard. Just 2 weeks ago, their bodies and their boat were returned back to China. Soon after that, China released a Taiwanese fisherman who had been held in China for more than 4 months. So on one hand, it seems that perhaps tensions are easing between the two. On the other hand, both Taiwan and China have boosted military maritime security in the area since these incidents. And Taiwan accuses China's Coast Guard of increasing incursions around the areas, around the waters of Jinmen. And also today, Taiwan's Defense Ministry said that in the few hours before the handover took place, 16 Chinese planes flew over the median line. And so that is a reminder of the military pressure that China is piling on Taiwan.
Thanks for that update, Louise. That was Louise Watt reporting live for us from Taipei. Former presidential candidate Wen-Je and others from his Taiwan's Peoples Party have been implicated in multiple corruption scandals in recent weeks. As Chris Gorin reports, it marks a turning point for a politician once seen as an alternative to the political status quo.
我也要向支持者和合作的厂商鞠躬道歉。
A public apology from the campaign finance chief of former presidential candidate Wen-Je in response to allegations of corruption. The campaign now says that it misreported expenses totaling more than $500,000 US. In one example, more than $150,000 US were marked as being paid to a public relations company, which the company says it never received. The campaign also failed to report revenue from a concert ostensibly held as a fundraiser, which it now says was a purely commercial event. In total, the campaign says 17 expenses were misreported, blaming the errors on an outside accountant. Ke, a former Taipei mayor and head of the Taiwan Peoples Party, is standing behind his team.
我们现在所有的支出，你知道，都有凭证，都用在选举相关的事务。更重要的，他没有跑到任何个人的口袋里面。我也保证，我们一定会继续努力，我们不会被任何挫折击垮的。
It's just one of several corruption scandals hanging over the party. Peng Zhengsheng, deputy mayor of Taipei under Ke, has been barred from leaving the country after he and Ke were implicated in a suspicious real estate deal dating from their time in office. It's been a difficult 6 months for a politician once seen as a rising star and disruptor of the country's two-party status quo.
And so he initially politically debuted in 2014. He framed himself as a beyond blue-green distinctions. And in this way, he benefited from being an independent at a time in which the public seemed to hope for alternatives. And so coming up as a new third party in that way, I think that actually was a disruption to the status quo. But at a certain point, he came to be seen as grandstanding on national issues rather than paying attention to very local mayoral issues. And so then his rating fell dramatically.
The TPP's cooperation with the main opposition KMT and its pushing of controversial reforms has seen its popularity plummet. One recent poll showed Ke's Taiwan Peoples Party with an approval rating of only 6%. Even the party's apology press conference was disrupted by a protester. But just how bad is the political damage from these scandals?
And with Ko as the party leader, if he falls, then that party has no future. And that also does mean an end to his presidential ambitions. But it's also possible that this will become part of his political brand, that the controversy glance off of him, and he will manage to frame himself as being targeted politically by the DPP government in a way that benefits them.
Unpopular and facing criminal investigations, the question is whether Ke and his party, who only recently shook up Taiwanese politics, can put aside recent scandals, or is this latest revelation too much to recover from? Alex Chun and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Former Nantou County Chief Li Chaoting has been sentenced to more than 400 years behind bars for corruption. Li was convicted of taking bribes worth more than $300,000 from contractors in natural disaster relief projects since 2009. After a 12-year trial, the Supreme Court made a final verdict on Li's 111 charges and closed the case. A new Taipei court has charged the owner of a boxing club with negligent homicide after a man died following a match at his gym. The 27-year-old man suffered a head injury during a match in 2022 at the gym in New Taipei. He later died in hospital. The match's organizer and gym owner did not arrange for paramedics to be on site during the event. The court's decision comes as Taiwan sees a surge in popularity in boxing after New Taipei native Lin Yuting brought home Olympic gold in the sport. Taiwan is home to a growing number of senior citizens who live alone and may need help from social services. But there are big questions about exactly how many there may be, causing concern among advocacy groups. John Van Trieste reports.
As Taiwan's population ages, the number of senior citizens living alone is on the rise. Though they may have enough money to support themselves, advocates for their welfare worry they may be vulnerable, whether to scams aimed at older people or to accidents like falls. These groups want to make sure safety nets are in place for these older people.
他跟社会跟他的家庭都断裂的话，像这类型的长辈就很可能在第一时间内比较没有人提供这样一个紧急的支持跟协助。
But getting help where it's needed could be tricky. It's not even clear how many of these people there are. While the Interior Ministry counted 670,000 at the end of last year, the Health Ministry only counted 390,000. Health Ministry officials say there are reasons for this big gap, from the way the ministries define senior citizens to the way they gather their statistics.
内政部的那个数字其实是一个纯从户籍登记资料里面做一个统计，卫福部在做的，我们实际上在处理的范围，则是针对独居的长辈他需要关怀的对象的人数。
But welfare groups worry the health ministry may be undercounting. They say there should be only one definition: anyone 65 or older who lives alone. Until then, they worry many in need of social services or care won't be able to get them before it's too late. James Lin and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Northeast Japan is experiencing record levels of rain after Tropical Storm Maria made landfall on Monday. Parts of Japan's Iwate prefecture saw flooding and landslides that have leveled at least one home and forced a tourist attraction to close. Flights from the area were cancelled and rail lines were partially suspended. The government says transportation services should be back to normal on Tuesday. The US is preparing for what it says could be a major attack on Israel. A White House spokesperson says Iran or one of its proxies could attack as soon as the end of this week. Concerns were raised after the militant Palestinian group Hamas accused Israel of assassinating one of its top leaders in Iran last month. The Pentagon says it's deployed a missile-guided submarine to the Middle East in preparation for a potential attack. Iran and Israel traded drone and missile strikes against each other in April, sparking fears of a wider regional conflict. Ukraine's top military commander claims Kyiv has taken control of 1,000 square kilometers of Russian land in their cross-border offensive. Colonel General Alexander Syrsky says Ukrainian forces will continue to push forward in the Kursk region as Moscow struggles to repel the incursion. In a televised meeting with top security officials, Russian President Vladimir Putin vowed to respond, saying Ukraine is trying to improve its negotiating power and undermine Moscow's stability.
Противник, безусловно, получит достойный ответ, а все цели, стоящие перед нами, вне всяких сомнений, будут достигнуты.
Taiwan's Olympians have returned home from Paris, and among them is Lin Yuting, who claimed Taiwan's first gold in the sport at the weekend. Our reporter Sandy Chi went to the airport to meet them.
F-16s welcome a flight carrying Taiwan's Olympic heroes, firing flares in a salute ahead of their arrival. This was just the beginning of the surprises waiting for them at Taiwan's main international airport on Tuesday morning. At the terminal, music filled the air, and banners, pictures and cards were prepared for the Olympians. This was the last batch of Taiwanese athletes to return from the Games. The flight carried the country's best in boxing, athletics and table tennis. But at the airport, all eyes were on boxer Lin Yuting, who became Taiwan's first ever gold medalist in the sport, after defeating Poland's Julia Szeremeta in the women's 57-kilogram category.
拿到最高的荣誉，展现出我们台湾最强大的力量与精神，是我想要做到的一件事情。那让大家可以认识我们，认识台湾。
Lin also took center stage at the Summer Games because of questions about her gender. Despite having competed in women's boxing for years, Lin was disqualified from a single event in 2023 after failing an undisclosed test given by the now discredited International Boxing Association. Lin had since been cleared to compete by the International Olympic Committee, and with the support of her coach, pushed through the noise to Olympic glory.
台上的事情台上解决嘛，那在台上可以交给我去解决。那台下我要特别感谢我的教练，他很辛苦，很努力，然后帮我承担了很多事情。那我在这边要特别的感谢他，帮我扛下了所有。那也请各位帮我给教练一个最热烈的掌声，可以吗？
Lin was joined by boxers Wu Shiyi and Chen Lianqing, who each won bronze at the Olympics.
谢谢大家在这次比赛当中，那么支持我们台湾的选手，不管是哪一个项目，就是会继续加油努力，希望大家继续支持拳击，喜欢拳击。
Taiwan won 7 medals at this year's Games, 2 gold and 5 bronze. While it's fewer than the haul from the Tokyo Olympics, many in the country still view it as a significant achievement. The haul also marks several historic firsts: the country's first gold in boxing, and the first time it has won 3 medals in the sport.
And now that the athletes have returned to Taiwan, they need to recover from the pressure and excitement from the Paris Summer Games, and then regain focus, and then overcome trials that lead up to the Olympics in LA in 2028. Chris Ma and Sandy Chi in Taoyuan for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, today we take you to Colombia, where Medellin is hosting its annual flower festival. I'm Laurel Stewart. Take care and see you next time.